Just like most meat cuts, reheating brisket can be somewhat tricky in process. Beef briskets tend to dry out easily if you don't know the proper way to reheat them. Thankfully, there are several ways to successfully reheat this meat. Nothing is more annoying than looking forward to eating reheated meat and then realizing it's all dried out. Below, we'll give you a guide on how to properly reheat the brisket and achieve the best results. The trick is, never rush beef brisket. We hope you enjoyed this video. These are the 4 best ways to reheat brisket. But before we get into the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel with notifications on so you don't miss out on any of the new videos we post. So first off, what is brisket? Brisket is a cut of meat from the breast or lower chest of beef or veal. The beef brisket is one of the 9 beef primal cuts, though the definition of the cut differs internationally. The brisket muscles include the superficial and deep pectorals. As cattle do not have collarbones, these muscles support about 60% of the body weight of standing or moving cattle. This requires a significant amount of connective tissue, so the resulting meat must be cooked correctly to tenderize it. The cut overlies the sternum, ribs, and connecting cartilages. According to the Random House Dictionary of the English Language, 2nd edition, the term derives from the Middle East brusket, which comes from the earlier Old Norse brödjosk, meaning cartilage. First, store the brisket the right way. The way you store the leftover brisket will affect the overall results of your reheated meat. This is why proper storage is essential. The key to storing your leftover meat is ensuring that it's kept in a tightly sealed container before you place it inside any fridge or freezer. It's best to use a vacuum sealer. In fact, this is the most effective way to seal and store any leftover brisket. However, if you have no sealer, consider wrapping the meat tightly inside a plastic wrap in order to reserve its moisture. Then place it in a freezer bag and seal. Experts suggest adding a small amount of juice to the meat before wrapping it. While this is truly a messy process, it helps keep the meat moist as the liquid soaks the brisket. Keep the brisket moist. If you choose to slice the meat before you freeze it, let the brisket cool while sitting in its own juices. This will help it ensure it retains as much moisture as possible. Freeze the slices on a flat sheet of baking paper initially. This will allow them to freeze separately. Once they're frozen, pop them in a Ziploc bag. Now you'll be able to take them out separately as you need them, instead of one giant chunk. We suggest letting the brisket rest, then separate the fat out from the cooking juices, leaving the quality au jus behind. Then after placing the whole brisket and the au jus into a foil food service pan, vacuum pack the whole thing, pan and all, making reheating a breeze. How to cook beef brisket. Since brisket is a very tough cut, the best methods for cooking are those that cook at low temperatures for a longer period of time, such as braising and smoking. Brining is also an option, which will turn the piece of brisket into corned beef after the meat is cured and brined. It is slowly simmered until tender. While braised, brined, smoked, and even cooked in an instant pot, brisket needs plenty of time to cook. A smoked brisket, Texas style, is rendered soft and delicious after 8 to 12 hours at 225 degrees Fahrenheit. A braised brisket, Jewish style, also cooks at a low temperature for at least 3 hours as it absorbs the liquid from the vegetables and the collagen fibers begin to break down. How to reheat brisket the right way. There may be more than 4 ways to reheat brisket successfully, but we're going to discuss the 4 methods that worked here today. These are the 4 best methods as far as we're concerned. There may be variations of these too. Number 1, oven. To reheat brisket in the oven, preheat the oven to 160. Remember to heat it slowly is the key. A higher heat will suck the moisture out of your meat. Now, double wrap your meat in foil to keep the meat from drying out. Just leave the brisket at room temperature for 20 to 30 minutes. If you're smart, you can use the leftover juices to keep it from drying out. Just let the meat rest in its own juices in the tin foil. If you want, you can even use some beef broth to help keep it meat moist. Now place the brisket in an oven for an hour if the meat is still whole, but about 20 minutes if the meat's sliced. If you do it right, you'll have nice and tender and juicy brisket. Number 2, smoker. Using a smoker to reheat your brisket is one of the best ways to do it. You get more than delicious smoky flavor, and if you do it right, you won't dry it out either, which of course is critical. First, set your smoker to 225 degrees, and then wrap your brisket cut in tin foil. Make sure you set your grill up with a 2-zone setup. When your grill is preheated, put your brisket in the cold zone of the grill and let it cook to an internal temperature of 155 degrees. Once that's done, you can unwrap your brisket. You can finish heating it up by putting it in the direct heat zone for about 10 minutes. Now, your brisket should be tasty and juicy because the heat did not dry it out. Number 3, crockpot. This method is slower than the others we discussed here, but it still works without drying out the meat. So it can reach room temperature, start by letting the brisket rest on the counter for about 20 minutes before placing it in the crockpot. Before you warm up the brisket, pour any juices, sauces, or beef broth you are using into the crockpot. Now, set the crockpot to low and just let it cook. I suggest the temperature range between 185 and 200 degrees. Once the meat is sufficiently heated, you can remove it from the crockpot and place it in aluminum foil boil after dropping any juices from the crock pot over it. Reheating with this method will take around 4 hours, but as I said, the meat will stay juicy. Let the brisket rest for 10 more minutes and enjoy your meal. Number 4. Sous vide. The sous vide method is a popular method for reheating brisket as long as you follow the proper steps. Then you should first familiarize yourself with it to ensure the best results. When you sous vide your brisket, this method will bring your meat up to a temperature that's the same as the preheated water bath. First, fill the container with water 1 inch above the minimum water line. Now, put the sous vide cooker on the edge of the bucket. Set the timer to 3 hours. In this case, it depends on the thickness of the brisket. Check the table to see which times are best suited for your brisket. Soak your brisket in the container, then close the lid. 3 hours later, take your brisket out of the tank and out of the sealed bag. Then slice and serve immediately. Can you boil or microwave leftover brisket? You may feel tempted to place the brisket in the microwave, as it is an indisputable way to quickly reheat food. The problem is, microwaving works by turning the water molecules into steam. Essentially, the brisket will be steamed from the inside out and you'll lose all of that moisture. This will leave you with dry, rubbery, and downright unappetizing meat. Plain old waste of a brisket if you ask of any reasonable person. How about boiling? Boiling a brisket that is wrapped in an airtight covering can have fairly good results, similar to the sous vide method. The meat doesn't dry out. The trick is ascertaining the internal temperature of the meat, as you still have to ensure that it's reached at least 160 degrees for it to be safe to eat. While there are sous vide cooking charts, this will not generally reach those water temperatures when boiling. How to serve brisket the next day. If you'd like to serve leftover brisket the next day, it starts with how you store it. Slice your brisket, and when it's all sliced, place your meat in a container and pour all of the juice meat, au jus, on it. Now the moisture will keep the meat from drying out. When you retrieve your brisket the following day, do not forget to discard the hardened fat that rises to the top. Then put the slices onto a tray and follow your preferred heating method listed above. Reheating your brisket properly will allow you to enjoy it as if you just pulled it out of your smoker. The flavor will be better, the texture of the meat will be much more enjoyable. Do not forget to monitor your brisket's temperature throughout the reheating process though. We recommend using a food thermometer to ensure your brisket is always heated to the perfect temperature. If you want great results, use professional methods. Thank you for watching. Be sure to check back for more. Until then, take care and enjoy.